Are you a radio enthusiast?
A research student?
Or a curious thinker looking for an adventure?
If this sounds like you, welcome to
The Summer I Found My Spark.
My name is Maci.
And I'm Errah. We're thrilled to be back for another exciting semester of interviewing Adelphi's brightest minds. In this podcast, we ask current research students about their journey of discovering their research topics, the gruesome process of reaching out to mentors, their successes, setbacks, and their future goals ahead. We hope this podcast can guide our listeners in their own path of research and self-discovery.
This episode is brought to you in collaboration with the Spark Research Center, where curiosity meets innovation. Each summer, the Spark Center funds students to take on independent research projects across various disciplines. Whether you're interested in computer science, dance, literature, or public health, there's something for every listener with a curious take on life. So keep your ears sharp, for this podcast might just leave you inspired or searching for your own spark. To find out more, please visit the Spark's Instagram page and website linked in our description.
Today we're joined by Carmen Llican and Maureen Khan, anthropology sophomores, and Dr. Kathryn Krasinski, an associate professor of anthropology who completed her PhD in anthropology from the University of Nevada, Reno. Dr. Krasinski is also an archaeologist who specializes in the earliest peoples of North America, prehistoric human activity, and Pleistocene bone modifications. This semester, I had the wonderful opportunity of being part of the Anthropology Lab, where I researched an indigenous glacial tradition in the Paksani Himalayas. Last month, Dr. Krasinski, Maureen, Carmen, and I, along with other faculty and student researchers, also presented our work at the Northeastern Anthropological Association Conference in New Jersey and the Adelphi Research Today. Today, we'll be learning more about their research in Alaska, their experiences attending their first conference, and the challenges of conducting ancient research. Let's hear more from our guest. How are you guys today?
Pretty good. Yeah, we're good. Excited. It's the end of the semester. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us. To get us started, we have listeners from a variety of different backgrounds. So Dr. Krasinski, could you just lay out the difference or similarities between research done in anthropology versus archaeology? And then afterwards, Carmen and Maureen, you guys can start us off by just introducing your projects and what is it that you guys are working on this semester?
Nice. Well, anthropology is the study of people, and that's a huge field because any place that a person has been or a community has been or any time is a place that we're going to be interested in. We break anthropology down into 5 subfields: cultural, linguistic, biological, archaeological, and applied anthropology. And so we tend to specialize in one of those subfields, and many of us work between and weave those subfields together along with many other disciplines. So I definitely weave archaeology, cultural anthropology, and linguistic anthropology together. I don't often work on the physical or biological side of humanity from the present or the past. And now, besides planet Earth, humans have been to the moon, and so there is a real conversation happening out there about conducting anthropological work, protecting archaeological sites on the moon. So basically, any place that people have been or are living, as well as our human ancestors, anthropologists are interested in.
Interesting. Do you think space archaeology or astronomy is like a new thing that might be upcoming then?
I think it's definitely upcoming. I actually just came back from the Society for American Archaeology conference, and there was a presentation. Folks were talking about this, about how do you protect the first footprints that people left on the moon, especially at a time when there's a lot of interest in going to outer space, and now we have our NASA astronauts who've gone to the dark side of the moon. There's a lot of natural objects in outer space, as well as a lot of our own human space trash. So we're at a point where we need to start talking about it and making preservation plans, and also really studying people when they're in those places. And for folks who specialize in studying people in all places and times, I think we're in the best position to be part of that conversation.
That's fascinating. Maureen, Carmen, could you lead us on?
With that same question or the original?
With the original.
Okay. So the work we've been doing in the lab has been primarily community-based, and so that involves working with the consent of Indigenous communities to conduct research on their material culture. So what we've been working on is lithic analysis of material culture from a particular community in Alaska. And we've learned a lot through that process. There's been a lot of little intricacies that, have come up along the way that have really taught us like the beginning stages of, archaeological work. From you want to add anything?
I just really think that what we did was very interesting to how it started, basically like focusing on one narrative of the community, and then it kind of like turned into like a much broader sense in a way, like seeing how like deep the history actually goes.
Very interesting. And do you have a timeline for how you for the timeline of the narrative history?
It was during the 50s, the 1950s, basically during like also when there is connection to the Prohibition era, and then in the 1920s as well.
Very cool. That's fascinating. And for those who don't know, the Pleistocene is a geological epoch, often called the Ice Age, that lasted from approximately 2.58 million to 11,700 years ago. And Maureen and Carmen, in New Jersey, we shared a moment during the conference where the both of you were fangirling over this 3D printed replica of Lucy, which is a 3.2 million year old skeleton of an early human ancestor. For you both, what has been the most exciting or unexpected part of your research process? And are there any new skills or techniques you both have learned along the way?
I guess I'll start. Going back to the fangirling moment, yeah. So at Rowan University, they have a mini anthropology museum. That's what they call it, but they have a lot of fossil recreations, and one of them was the Neanderthal skeleton, which is a full replica, which was really, really cool. We don't have that here at Adelphi. So just seeing it up close and personal was really fun because you realize how many similarities there are between us and our hominid ancestors. And it just paints a different picture than the one we see in media where Neanderthals are like cave people, they're unintelligent, they're so different than us, we're better than them. But that's not true. And it's just really, that's the fun part of anthropology, is just recognizing all our similarities across time and realizing that today, as the same species, Homo sapiens, we are all very, very connected and similar, even more so than, our similarities to the past ancestors. Sorry, what were the other questions?
Are there any new skills or techniques that you've learned along the way in this process?
Go ahead.
For me, at least, was learning how to distinguish the difference in the lithics. So me and Maureen, we had a tough time at first trying to distinguish like the microplates between them, between the other flakes. So, we had our professors come in to kind of like show us like little examples from other what's called replicas.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as like we started noticing like the patterns between them that like have like basically like the, how would you call it, like the little corners of it were basically like intentional in a way,
like the pressure points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was for me at least, like learning how to like distinguish between like the microplates and like the flakes, because with like just looking at it, they all look the same.
And do you want to just give a visual description of what a lithic looks like? What is it for anyone who just doesn't know what it means?
Ooh.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So flakes range from, being like the size of a finger to even the size of like your fingernail, like the edge of your fingernail. So there's a lot of variety in the sizing of them, which makes it hard to differentiate between, what is a flake and what is just, a random piece of rock. And so when it comes to microblades are even harder to distinguish because now these are really, really tiny blades, like the tip of your finger, size of the tip of your finger, even smaller because they've been broken. And we're trying to distinguish that from just shards of stone that have been flaked off to create a different tool. So it's really hard to see the differences, but like Carmen said, when you take the time to go through them and analyze them, you start to see the differences poke through, like the specific wear on it. Like there's a distinct line down the middle of the the flakes. No, sorry, the microblades that show where the other part of it was flaked off to make the blade itself. So that's kind of what you have to differentiate and figure out.
It's very interesting how much hands-on involvement there is in the lab there. I'm wondering if there's been any moments of self-exploration or self-discovery during this research project, whether in terms of skill or just learning more about what you like as anthropology researchers.
I definitely learned that it's time consuming. There is a lot of time and effort. That makes me more obvious to Professor Krasinski, who's been in this for obviously much longer than me and Carmen, but it's very, very meticulous work, which personally I like. I like doing that kind of work, working with my hands and just, being able to put on my headphones and work away is kind of something that, works for me, works well for the type of person I am. But I feel like I definitely learned a valuable thing, which is that working with communities is very enriching and very fulfilling because you're able to help them, connect with their history in a way that they haven't been able to before this. And just being able to be a part of that meant a lot to me and resonated with me in a way I didn't expect it to. So that's definitely something very valuable that I walked away with.
Sounds very special as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about for me, honestly. It definitely took a lot of time.
Mhm.
Still have a lot of little bags to go through. So we're excited to go through them for the future. I think for me was while we were cleaning them or like dry brushing them. We were able to see like different types of materials. So like some were like different colors from others. Like some we examined might be rhyolite.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Most of them.
Yeah, and I think that's something for me that we would love to get into to kind of like, what would you call it?
Further analyze them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great future project. It's a great research question.
Yeah.
And Dr. Krasinski, now I'm going to pass over this question to you from a student researcher once upon a time to now a professor. You've accumulated years of experience. What has been the most valuable quality or skill you've gained from the research you've done over the years?
So many. I definitely think working in teams, working with community, listening, the level of detail that you learn to pay attention to when you're in the lab, all of those skills for me were honed in lab situations. From practical in a molecular primatology lab, from my undergrad, learning how to do PCR, for example, or how to run a gel electrophoresis, to how to conduct oral history or how to prepare an IRB or an institutional review board application, how to make sure that I'm doing ethical work or work that is in a consent mode rather than just or only what I'm interested in, making sure that the questions are questions that community has as well, and that anything that I'm doing is supporting a larger vision. That way it's part of not just a scientific conversation, but a public conversation and a community conversation. And community can be that can be the descendant community, the folks whose ancestors' lives we might be studying, but it can also be local people, knowledgeable folks. There are a lot of ways to involve community in everything we do. And so that and working with students are some of my most favorite things.
And I think that's also what makes anthropology so special, is the fact that you're working with communities, and as anthropologists, you're also impacting them in real time. It's a big conversation that we have in all of our classes. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of consent and why it's something that should be more widely discussed in perhaps non-anthropology classes as well?
Yeah, everything we do, we're all interconnected in space and time and through community. And even even taking comparative botanical samples can have an impact, small and large, on communities. And once you start to figure out how much we are interconnected, it just makes sense to be in conversation, because you're missing a huge piece of the story if you're only looking at the research from one perspective. Most of the questions I've worked on the answers have been more robust, more enriched, and more accurate by being engaged in community work. And at the same time, if nobody else has an interest in these questions, maybe I should be doing something that's more valuable to the public or the publics. So, every project I've ever been involved in, I've really been interested in the question and the place. But it's really, for me now, working in Alaska for over 20 years, it's about commitment to place, commitment to community, and just hearing what community interests and concerns are. Whether that was a big earthquake that caused some damage to an area, maybe that was a big storm that caused some additional damage, or maybe there's additional interest in an area that we need to start making sure that those sites are protected and not accidentally destroyed by lots of other activity happening there.
Yeah, those are definitely great reasons to pursue research. And speaking of community and interconnectedness, Maureen and Carmen, I'm curious what your experience has been working with Professor Krasinski and Professor Weigel directly inside the lab, outside the lab, and how have your mentors and lab mates shaped your experience and perspective during college?
I'll start off. I just want to start off and say that I owe a lot of this to Professor Weigel and Professor Krasinski, and I would not be where I am right now in terms of experience without their help and support and mentorship. And I'm very, very grateful for both of them and everything that they've done to help me and Carmen. Working with them has been a wonderful experience, and I'm very happy that I get 2 more years to work with them. And I'm excited to see what other, what other projects I can undertake while here in the lab. And it's really comforting to know that I have 2 amazing mentors to guide me along the way, no matter what, project I decide to, venture off and do. I'll still have them, at a close reach to be able to reach out and need any support with that. And it's really nice because it's like a safety net in a way. Like, me and Professor Weigel spoke one time about, plans after undergrad, and he was like, you still have a ways away from that time, you're still in the safety of our little lab here. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And it's just been a really, really fun and great experience. And I love being around my lab mates as well. I feel like I learn a lot from their different perspectives. Even though we're all, anthropology centered, we all have our own various, niches. Like Zephyr learns about childhood development and education, which brings in an alternate perspective. Carmen is double majoring in Latin studies. Jacob is working on environmental studies as well. There's just a lot of variety in the lab, even though we all still, have the baseline of anthropology there.
I think took the words right out of my mouth. It really just brings us all together and shows how interdisciplinary anthropology is. And as she said, very grateful for Krasinski and Weigel, and also the whole anthropology department as well. All the professors there, so nice, very encouraging, and always willingly to offer you advice and everything. And we hear stories from them as well, and it's really encouraging to hear we're not the only ones that are going through this or have been through this. It's all an experience for us, and we're excited for the future.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like how it works because we do explain how you get started in the lab, but it's also a lot of independence in the lab, and I remember having that kind of independence and first not being sure of what I should be doing, am I doing it right, but actually growing into a more confident researcher because I had the time to become comfortable with how you work in the lab. And we just kind of run up and down the hallway and pop into the lab and see what's going on, or I see student researchers running down the hallway and rope them into my office so we can talk about what's happening. So I think it's pretty collegial, and sometimes it gets really busy, but I think a lot of times it's just seeing what we see, and then if a question comes up, kind of having conversations about that.
And I think taking initiative is also one of the core values of our lab, and just research at the center of it. I mean, you want to be involved in the research project that you are doing. I have a two-part question for you, Dr. Krasinski. One, how have the students' initiative and independence over the years inspired or influenced your projects or your experience as a professor? And would you mind sharing that story you shared with us in class about that one professor and something involving a cricket? Or was it a grasshopper?
I'm not sure I can remember.
That's the one where he made you, he's like, who's the...
So, I mean, students are a key part of my inspiration. I think some of the best questions come from students because students are still learning the literature. And on the one hand, that might mean that they don't have all of the details, but at the same time, it means that students aren't stuck in a conversation that's been happening, and they're more free to think outside of the boundaries of how we normally talk. So yeah, I think students are really critical to my success and to developing ideas, but also everyone comes up with different interests, and that helps me with creativity, so I can think about how can we incorporate those interests and those questions with what we have happening here at the archaeology lab or in the anthropology department.
Yeah.
There was a time as a doctoral student, I was taking a class by ultimately my mentor and professor, Gary Haynes, who had been working in Zimbabwe. And he passed around these insects. They are dried mopane worms, and we were invited to taste them. They don't look like worms. But as the anthropologist, I thought, this is a great opportunity. I don't have a religious reason or a health reason to decline, and so I tried it out. And it was a very interesting experience. I also happened to be the only student in that class who tasted or ate my offering, and so this may be true or not true, but I've always connected this to being offered a place on the research team in Zimbabwe. I think just being willing to step out of your comfort zone and try new things, as long as, again, not every culture and tradition eats insects, so, you have to think about your context, but when it's just try new things. It opens up lots of new doors.
Ever since you shared that, I've been thinking of it as such a almost a perfect anecdote for what risk-taking feels like. Would you eat a bug? Would you?
Me personally,
Or a worm?
okay, it like really depends on the context. In this context, if it was like in a class.
Okay, if Professor Krasinski came into the lab and offered
Okay,
you
well,
something.
wait. In the lab or in a class? Like if I'm in her class. No, there's a difference. I would.
Food in the lab.
Well, there's that. Okay,
Also,
so-
it's a classroom.
Okay. If it pertains to what we're learning about, sure. But if she's just like, hey, try this. No, I'm so sorry. I would. if there's like a reason where it's like enriching for like a lesson, yeah, okay. Otherwise, I don't have any business eating a worm. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, there's other ways to get protein. I think.
That's completely fair. Yeah. And then we're gonna switch gears a little bit. Here at PAWS Radio, we have something we'd like to call the oh no moments. So this is when the project idea you've spent weeks refining gets shot down, or the results you were hoping to get backfires. But as researchers, we know that failure is fundamental to success. Have you had any oh no moments during your projects together? And if so, how do you deal with those rejections and setbacks?
I don't know if we've really had like a moment of a rejection. Maybe just
Delayed.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that because we didn't realize, like I said, how time intensive this was gonna be. So when it came to timeline and progression of the project, we didn't really think it would take as long as it did. Like, we thought, okay, well, we started off with cataloging, so inputting the artifacts into a database. That took a little bit of time, but it was manageable. But then cleaning is what took a lot of time and really pushed back our projected timeline by a lot, because we would sit there and open a bag and it would say, okay, like 20 flakes of various sizes. We would start it and we would think, oh, we'll finish this within like an hour, 30 minutes. We would be sitting there for over an hour doing the same bag, and it was like, are we doing it wrong? Like, there were so many times where me and Carmen turned and looked at each other. We were like, is there a better way to be doing this? They were like, are we doing something wrong? Is there like an actual technique and we're just like troubleshooting here? Like, yeah, so I would say that was like the main oh no moment, because our main goal was just to analyze them and, catalog. So not much of rejection was possible, but that was, I guess, our one oh no moment.
Yeah. Carmen?
I think we were mostly fine. Like she said, it was delay, and if there was any like little setbacks, we had the guidance of Professor Krasinski and Professor Weichel to help us with that. And especially when we're looking at the writings on the bags.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
the field notations are sometimes a little hard to decipher. And we understand it's not, super easy being in the field and being tired and, having to write on these baggies and make sure you have all the right information. But it was sometimes hard to like make out what numbers were there and what they meant by certain things, and try to standardize the writing so we could relabel the bags in a better way.
Have there been any moments where you went back to Professor Weigel or Krasinski and were like, yeah, what is this? And they were like, we don't know.
All the
We
time.
don't know.
Yeah, all the time. Professor Weigel was like, I think I meant this. And we were like, okay, great.
Yeah. And Professor Krasinski, any stories from you?
I think that's one of the most exciting parts of doing anthropological research and working with students, working with community, and being in the field, is that you don't know what's going to happen. So you're constantly adjusting. And this works for cultural anthropologists who are in collaboration with living communities. It works for archaeologists who are doing collaborative work with communities, and also for the material culture that we might be digging that is static, but still we don't control that. They're not subjects, they're not specimen numbers, they're all people. And so we don't know what's going to happen in the field, and we don't know what's going to happen with the weather. So it's constant adjusting, and that I think it's just super fun, whether you're stuck in a storm and you're in a cloud for 3 weeks and so it's not safe to hike around. You learn how to learn in more detail precisely where you're camping, and in that situation, our team ended up finding a pretty old site, an Ice Age site. And so it worked out that we couldn't see anything in a cloud for a few weeks, or it's almost always a weather storm or a vegetation. But even in the lab, we figure out and we adjust. We thought we had this question and it could be addressed this way, and you figure out what you have and modify. And I try not to force anything. I just try to listen to what people are telling me and what the landscape is telling me and what students are telling me.
I think after pandemic, a lot of us have gotten better at adjustments overall, but I still see some resistance on campus from students, whether it's a day of exploring in the city and people get scared of subways and things like that. Do you have any advice for students on how they can have that adventurous spirit and sort of understand how they can use resilience to be more adaptive?
Practice, take small steps. I mean, definitely you have to listen to your body. You have to follow your gut. If you don't feel safe, you don't have to put yourself in a situation just to try to be adventurous, but develop a plan that could work and maybe try something shorter term before you're ready for a larger trip or a larger project.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're down to our one final question. Maureen and Krasinski, you guys are sophomores, but sophomores.
Yes.
And in a couple of years, Maureen, you'll be working on your honors thesis, and then Carmen, you might be working on a capstone project.
Yes.
And those are some really daunting times for people, because you have a lot of applications, you have to write proposals, and it's a very lengthy process. But both of you have undergone the experience as freshman and sophomore already, which is a pretty big feat. Do you have any advice, for students who might be undergoing this similar experience, or something that you look forward to honing in by the time you'll be working on your projects?
For advice, I would say first, give yourself a lot of grace. Not too much grace, but give yourself some grace. If you're a student and you're working or volunteering or just studying and you have a really hard major, it can be hard to divert some of that time and energy to applications and, tailoring your applications for internships or for jobs or things like that. It's really time consuming. And with the help of Professor Krasinski, I've been able to tailor some of my internship applications really well, but it's a lot of back and forth between different edits and different drafts and everything. So it can be hard to factor that in, but you have to really budget your time, set aside like an hour every other day or so just to work on that specifically. And that can be hard, but if it works better for you to split it up to 30 minutes a day, just try to get in some kind of progress to working on those applications. And once you get out one or two, it gets really easy to repurpose the ones that you have for other applications. Like, you tweak some of the wording, you go on the website of the application, find specific details, put that in. A lot of the questions you'll notice overlap if you're applying to similar applications. So it may seem like a lot of work when you have like 5 places you want to apply to, but after like the first 2 applications, it gets a lot easier. And always reach out to professors or your peers who can write really well. Ask them what they think, and just really, really edit and tailor your applications towards the internship that you're trying to apply to.
That's great advice. Yeah.
One of the ones I was going to say, like, use the resources that you have.
Exactly.
Like, you might, for me at least, I was always scared about going to Krasinski or going to another professor about, like, looking at, like, my internship application.
Why were you scared?
I have no idea. I'm scared of rejection, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm scared of, what is it, being judged in a way. That's still me. I'm working on that on myself.
Yeah.
And this is also another kind of like exposure therapy for me as well, like sending them out to Krasinski so she could look over them and then advise me on what I should like be doing next or like be doing instead. Yeah, just don't be scared about them. Like, they went through this as well, and they offer a lot of help for us.
Yeah, and Dr. Krasinski, my follow-up questions was going to be similar, where I talked to a lot of freshmen or sophomore who were scared of how to approach professors. So they sort of end up ChatGPTing the same format of cold emails, which I'm sure you guys have gotten used to by this point. What advice do you have for students who are scared to reach out to mentors to pursue research?
Okay, well, first of all, that I think is a pretty common feeling. I also had that feeling. Just tell a professor whose class that you're taking that you really like that you're really interested in this topic, and tell them specifically something, and hey, is there any way that I can have more of this in my life or start doing projects on this? That's all it takes.
Yeah, I think this was some really valuable advice, and I know our listeners will be really grateful to hear that students are having similar experiences. But before we wrap up, one of the keynotes from the NEAA conference asked us a crucial question about what can anthropology do. And as a neuroscience major, I found anthropology to really enhance my critical thinking and really ask me to understand my own intentions when I'm doing any sort of research. So I just like to open the floor for anyone who'd like to talk about the importance of anthropology as a skill and discipline and why it's crucial for students to engage with it given our current socio-political climate.
Yeah, so I feel like anthropology really, like you said, enhances a student's understanding of even their own major. Anthropology connects all of us, like Professor Krasinski said. And so regardless of what your major is, as long as there's people involved, anthropology can be applied to it in order to help you better understand your major and the people who partake in it. Whether it's business or psychology or economics, anything. As long as you're talking about what people think and do and how they behave, anthropology can help you better understand it. And also just as a person, I feel like anthropology is really critical to kind of being a better person because, there's a lot of discourse and online, like you said, the climate isn't, it's very tumultuous right now. I feel like a lot of people could benefit from having this kind of cultural relative understanding. And that just means, not judging another culture by your culture standards. So looking at, another culture, another person, and thinking about it from their view, putting yourself in someone else's shoes to better understand them and why they may have acted or said something or done something. This isn't used to excuse behaviors, but it's used to have sort of empathy and sort of, human-to-human understanding of things versus just, looking at it from your culture or your standpoint and viewing that as the correct way. I just feel like anthropology is something a lot of people could benefit from just to be a better person all around.
Yeah, I think even like before I got into anthropology, I had no idea what it was, and then once I started like doing my own research about it, it basically broadened my perspective of the world, and like it's changed a lot of how I view other people and how I go about like interacting with others as well. I feel like it's definitely something that everybody should like get into. Take 1-2 anthropology classes at least to get an understanding of how it is.
Definitely, and they should be with Professor Krasinski and Dr. Wagel because they're amazing.
Yeah.
Well, all of our faculty are amazing. I think that you both did a really nice job answering that question. I think anthropology gives us a language of how to talk to anyone, no matter what our similarities or perceived similarities and differences are. And if we're going to understand each other and our experiences and try to work together towards a shared future, we need to be talking to each other and curious and trying to understand what people's experiences are like. And then, that anthropology training can be applied in so many contexts, whether it's in medical anthropology and finding culturally appropriate ways to treat particular communities or particular diseases, whether that's a forestry expert or an environmental scientist working to protect or conserve a particular area of forest. That forest is probably not quote unquote pristine. It probably has a human history that is important to know, to preserve and to understand if that's the type of forest that you want to protect. So if people are interested in a project, that alone makes it anthropology. So you should start bringing your anthropological perspective to any work that a person is doing.
Yeah, I think these are wonderful answers to what anthropology can do, and just tells us that the limit is defined by our imagination and our creative explorations. But thank you so much, Carmen, Maureen, and Dr. Krasinski, for joining us today. We're so grateful for your time and for sharing your adventurous, and I have to bring him up, Indiana Jones-esque research story with our listeners. If you have any questions about any of their projects or would like to collaborate, shoot us an email, which is included in the episode description. And thanks you to the Sparks Research Center for sponsoring this episode and continuing to support student innovation across campus. If you want to learn more about how to get involved with Sparks or apply for next summer's program, check out their page on the university website. We'll link it in the episode description.